All right, let's talk about those calls I mentioned before we went to break. Number one is Boeing. Reiterated a top idea, Wells Fargo. The target, 272. Steph, it's been tough owning this thing. So I'm curious as to why you still do.
Absolutely. Because it's cheap. It has a free cash flow yield of 7%, and they're going to generate about $11 billion in free cash flow by 2024. The catalyst for that is the China certification of the 737 MAX, which I think is very important. A third of the 737 MAX in inventory are for Chinese companies. So this is a very big announcement when it comes, and I think it's coming soon. It's a reopen, though, name, Scott. So on days where you think we're going to reopen fully and we're not going to have closures and we don't have problems with vaccines and we don't have problems with COVID strains, you know, it's going to trade on that, right? That's why it's so volatile, but I do think there's value there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a can't get out of their own way stock, too. All right, if all things were equal, you take the pandemic out of it, okay, sure, the stock would probably be higher than where it is now, but the company keeps shooting itself in the foot.
Restructurings take time. Remember GE and how long that took, but then it really did pay off. So I'm just looking for a long-term opportunity, staying patient. I have it right-sized. But I do think you'll make money in the next year or 18 months.
GE's paying off already? Well, I don't know. That remains to be seen, but we'll talk about that later.
It was up 70%.
I mean, that story's far from over. I think we can both agree on that. All right, Square, upgraded to neutral, yes, Bank absolutely. Of America. All right, let's talk about this, Degas, because you own Square. Part of this note is on the fact that Dorsey's out at Twitter, so theoretically he has more time to focus on Square. If, in fact, he's focusing on anything other than Bitcoin and whatever else these days. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so anytime as an investor, I have a CEO that's more focused on the company that I own, that's a positive. However, the Square is having some challenges, and those challenges around, can they really focus on improving profitability? And also the increasing competition. A lot of people are moving into this space. So can Square distinguish itself and actually have a great implementation plan? That's what I'm looking from Jack Dorsey to really focus and do. And so right now we have about a market perform on this company. We don't have a full position in it, but we're really continuing to watch Square.
All right. So, Doc, you own Square calls. And what I find more interesting, I think, for today's news is that you bought PayPal shares and calls.
Yeah, I agree with Degas's comments on Square, and I think that this is one that's going to do much better, Scott, with Dorsey's focus. And you mentioned, of course, his fascination and commitment to Bitcoin and cryptos. I think that's another driver here. As far as PayPal, everybody seemed pretty bulled up after the earnings. It popped in the after hours after that Venmo statement, Scott, but then the guidance was really what knocked it down. And people were still buying it at about 205, and I thought that was still too rich. I was getting into it pretty aggressively today. From 186 and 182 today, I've been buying PayPal, both stock and setting myself up with upside calls about 3 months out into the future, Scott. So I do think the future's bright for PayPal, and I think after this, 30 or more % sell-off from its highs, not just in the last couple weeks, but from the highs that you're buying it at, I think, a great value here. And Venmo is going to be something that does give Jack some fits, but I think Jack over at Square can deal with it.
We're talking about calls that you have, Doc. What'd you make of this Adam Jonas thing on Ford today? I mean, you have Ford calls, too. So he reiterates underweight Morgan Stanley, target $12. He'd be the first, and I think, in fact, he did last week, tell you that he missed it because he had downgraded Ford in January of 21. Stock is absolutely ripped. Kramer thinks it can still go higher. I think it's up. I think it's like 120% gain this year. I don't have the exact number right in front of me, but I thought that's what 112% over a year. Kramer says more to go. Jonas reiterates underweight. What do you say?
I don't know how you underweight them, Scott, with those lightnings just rolling out now. And I don't think you fade GM for the same reason with their electrified vehicles. I think that is the time where you want to be riding that wave in there. So I agree with Jim Cramer. Jonas, I understand, he's probably more focused, and I read the note, Scott, that he talked more about the legacy expenses that they have, both those companies, as well as Chrysler, have significant legacy costs, from the pensions to many of the other deals that they've cut over the years that Rivian and Lucid and Fisker and Tesla and a host of others do not have. But that doesn't mean that they can't just really get an exciting product out there that everybody wants. And, you know, whether it's the Bronco or the Lightning, I think both those are good reasons to stick with Ford.